Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of The Legal Zone. John Salati, how are you today?
I am very well, Salon, and glad to be back with you.
Glad to see you. Dr. Cheney?
Hello, how are you?
Doing good. You doing okay this morning?
Yes, I am.
Good to see you. And we have a very special guest today, Miss Tymus, and we're going to get into her amazing, unfortunate story. Today's episode is extremely important. And I know there's going to be a large group of people who watch this and they're not going to be happy with this particular show. So I'm just saying that in the very beginning. There's a large population of people who this is going to impact negatively. So I'll put that disclaimer out now, but it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed. So as always, let me share my screen and get into our little definition for today. Unjust enrichment. Some of you may have heard of this before. Some of you may not. My law students who are preparing to take the bar, you should know this. If you don't, here it is. Unjust enrichment. We have the word unjust, which seems to mean unfair, not just. And enrichment, to be enriched means to be given something. So an unfair giving is the one definition. An unfair giving is unjust enrichment. There are certain elements for an unjust enrichment. One element that has to take place, there has to be a benefit conferred upon a party. Something of benefit has to be given to a person. The second element that is a must with unjust enrichment is there has to be a knowledge of this benefit. Someone has to be given something. They know they've been given it. It's not like a gift and I sneak $1,000 in someone's book. They never open the book. They don't know it's there. This is something that the person has to know that they've given. And this person has to accept the benefit and retain it. They have to get it, keep it, and retain it, accept it and retain it. And refuse to give it back. That's unjust enrichment. So cases like this you would see come up where someone wants to buy someone's house. They talk about entering into a contract. The seller says, look, I'm not in the house. I'm going to sell you the house. So the buyer moves into the house with plans of buying the house in the future. While the buyer is in the house, they start fixing it up. They paint, they replace the holes in the walls, they rip up the old carpet and put hardwood. After a month or so, the seller says, you know what? I think I'm going to keep the house. Get out. Now the person has to get out because there was no contract, but the seller has all these benefits that was conferred upon him or her. They knew that this stuff was going on, and now they're trying to keep it. Well, the buyer could bring a suit of unjust enrichment onto the seller to collect all of the money that was put into the house to make the house better. That's, in a nutshell, unjust enrichment. Now, the suit that we have today is a suit in unjust enrichment, but our client is the defendant. And if you follow the show, you would notice that the majority of our cases, we are plaintiff attorneys, because it just seems as though people who are done unjustly, where there's an injustice, they're the ones seeking to exact justice. But in some situations, as the case today, people would come at you with their alleged wrongs, but there is no wrong. So we have to fight for defendants at some point in some cases. And that's what we're dealing with now. So Ms. Tymus, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good. So what's going on with you?
My husband had a home improvement business, and he was doing work for a lady by Miss Williams, and she wrote him a check for $31,000. The check was written to him in August. You can see where he endorsed the check, but I can't find out what he did with the money once he cashed the check. I believe he might have took it to her, but I'm not sure. I don't know what happened with the money. In terms, she wrote him the check in August, and he got sick November 18th, and he passed away on November 28th, 2019. So in terms, July of 2019, I was filed with a lawsuit with what you just explained. She won her $31,000 back. Unfortunately, when I go through his account, I can't figure out what happened to the $31,000. So in terms, when she first sued me, I offered her a settlement. She declined it. Maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I offered her another settlement. She declined that as well. Again, I don't know what he did with the money. When you look at his bank statements, you don't see him depositing $31,000 in his account. So I don't know where the money is.
Okay, so let's put things in context. Your husband, your late husband, was a contractor.
Yes.
Did he have his own contracting business?
Yes. He was licensed in DC to do home improvement.
Okay, were you in business with your husband?
No.
So this was your husband's own business,
Yes.
and he was working as a contractor, and he was doing contracting work. And apparently him and Miss Williams entered into a contract. I'm going to play this part of the deposition, and this is new to you. You've never seen this. And we're going to just talk about what she says was going on. All right, so in 2019, and so you asked around, did you have some contractors in mind? Did you know anybody? Did Garnett or Al direct you to somebody?
No.
All right, so what'd you do?
Derek had did some work for me, for my niece.
Now, Derek is your husband, right?
Yes.
Okay, so she's talking about how she got Derek to start working on her basement.
But I also knew Derek's dad.
What was Derek's dad?
George.
Is he still?
You can't hear. You can't hear.
Can you all hear it?
No.
You all try muting. I'm gonna try that again. Try muting your phones. Yeah, I'll mute. All right, let's try it again. So this is her, and the audience might have heard it, but I want you all to hear it too. Garnett or Al direct with somebody?
No.
All right, so what'd you do? Can you hear?
Derek had did some work for me, for my niece. But I also knew Derek's dad.
What was Derek's dad's name?
George?
Is he still alive?
No.
So you've known Derek for how long?
Well, he was a baby. I knew his dad and mom.
Oh, so you knew him all his life?
Yes.
Through his dad and mom?
Yes.
Oh, so that was almost like kinfolk. You was at his funeral?
Yes.
Oh, because Vivian said that somebody walked up to her. She wasn't sure that was you. Okay. So unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we see in this situation that the plaintiff, Miss Williams, knew your husband. She knew her long before you knew him. Right? You could unmute yourself now.
Yes. His father's name was George, but his mother name wasn't Rosalind. That's my husband, biological father, and Rosalind was his stepmother.
Okay. So she's saying that she knew Derek, your husband, and that he had did work for one of her relatives. And that's why she contracted with him to do this work. But then something else interesting happened when I asked her about the contract. And again, this is very important. This is talking about contract work, contractors, and third parties. Listen to what she says about, and I'm sure you didn't know any of this.
No.
You could tell me if you knew any of this happened. All right, so mute your phones again so we could hear.
Two, 4, 0, 4, 6, 3, 4, 9, 3, 3.
All right. So you and Derek and Bossy have this meeting about your basement. He tells you the price and the payment schedule, and you agree to it. Did you all have a written contract?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that?
No.
No one seems to have a copy of it. Did Bossy get a copy?
No.
Just did Derek keep a copy?
Well, I don't know. At that time when he came and we did the first check.
And when was that? Do you remember it's 2019, I'm assuming, right?
Right.
You remember the month?
I'm not for sure. Was it in June?
Around June?
Yeah. My mom was very ill during that time. And so when we did the check and Derek had the papers, the blueprints and everything, I said, I get a call, I need to go. Derek said, I'm going to get you a copy. And I said, okay, I gotta go. And I left. So I don't have a copy, and I don't think Boss ever got a copy. Just went on with the work.
All right, but you remember signing something?
I was almost sure I signed papers that day, because he had the blueprints and other papers, and we did the first check I gave him.
That's that same time in June?
Yes.
Okay. So let's put things in context. She called up your husband around June. You didn't know this.
No,
She says that she might have signed a contract, but later she says that she doesn't even know if there is a contract. She gave him a check for $30,000 in June. Contractors often will charge a third of the payment up front. Did you all hear that? Contractors will charge a third of the total payment up front. So he charged her $30,000. She gave him that in June. Then she gave him a second check for $31,000 or $30,000 again,
31.
$31,000 in August. Right. Now, she had a guy named Bossy who was supervising your late husband, Derek. So your husband starts to work in June. Come August, a month later, because she gave him that at the end of June. So August the 6th, she gives him a second check, which means in that 1 month period, he did $30,000 worth of work, right?
Right.
Which is why she gave him the second check, August the 6th. When did your husband pass?
November the 26th, 2019.
So from August the 6th to November the 26th, when he passed, that's August, September, October, almost 4 months had passed. She had someone overseeing your husband, and no one ever said he's not working. I asked her many times, let's hear that. Let's hear when I asked her about, was Derek doing any work after this period? And see what she says. Let's get here.
All of this happened, the blueprints and the first check was around the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
And then you gave him the second check in the beginning of August.
Mm-hmm.
That 1 month period, your mom was sick and you weren't there a lot. And they were coming in and out of the basement.
Yes.
How many times did you think you saw him in July?
I could have maybe seen Derek maybe twice.
All right. And in August?
I saw him when we did the check, and I think at the same with the check that day we talked about. He showed me samples about
anything during.
Hold on. Okay.
I don't remember seeing Derek.
You see Bossy?
Well, I see Bossy. We're friends, so that's a difference, you know. Bossy go to my house, I go to Bossy's house. We're friends.
Okay, so you were seeing Derek all throughout this process?
At different times, you know, not on a regular basis. I may just see him go past the window.
Who, Derek or Bossy?
Derek or Bossy.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. So you were seeing Bossy more than you were seeing Derek, because sometimes you would go to his house, sometimes he would. Did he ever go to the hospital with you, to your mama?
Bossy? No.
Okay. At any time, did Bossy say, hey, Miss Sylvia, Derek's not doing any work?
No.
Okay. So she has an overseer named Bossy who is supervising Derek. She gave Derek $31,000 in August. Derek dies in November, and her overseer never once said that Derek wasn't working.
Now, see, I didn't know that her and Bossy was friends. From my understanding, my husband, birth name is Dirk, but we call him by his nickname. So I would call him Shine. So I'm still talking about my husband. I thought that my husband and Bossy was friends. So I don't know.
Yeah, apparently they're all three friends. Right. And again, you don't know any of this.
No,
But-
and that don't look like the lady that I saw at the funeral. But again, I only seen her twice in that one day. So I don't know.
All right, so let's get things in context. Contractor, he charges $30,000 upfront. She pays him the end of June. August is the second draw, is what they call them, draws. Gives him $31,000. She admits that she saw him August, September, and October. She admits that she had someone supervising him. And by the time that he died, almost 4 months had went by and he was working all that time. Now he dies and she comes to you and she wants all $31,000 back.
Right.
This is where I think the issue comes. I'm going to let you hear this and listen to what she says you or someone told her. And I think this is the crux of this big unfortunate situation. So the situation for everyone listening, Miss Tymus is getting sued for $31,000 for her husband's business, the check that was given for her husband's business to do work back in August 2019. So everyone knows now. But look what she says when I ask her about what you told her. And again, you could notice her. And again, for you young attorneys out there, this is why Zoom is so important to do video recordings, because you can go back and you can study the person's nonverbal. Dr. Cheney's big on nonverbal communication. Look at her demeanor while she's saying what she's saying and see if you can pick up what she might be feeling.
Like the beginning of December or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then what happens?
Um,
Was Bossy at the funeral?
yes.
Okay. So now we're in December. The funeral is passed, and then you wanted somebody to come look at the basement.
I talked to Derek's wife.
In December.
Yeah, it was after his service and everything.
Okay.
So I ever really talked to her.
So this is after, I think this funeral was December 6th. Was that the first time you talked to her?
Yes.
When you saw her,
Huh?
when you saw her at the funeral, was that the first time you ever saw her?
Yes, I don't know his wife.
Okay, and then what?
I talked to Vivian.
Right,
And,
that's
huh?
that's his wife, yeah.
And so I told her Derek was doing work here and that I had given Derek a check for $31,000 and I would like my check back, well, my money back. We set up a meeting for her to come to my house or whatever. She could bring somebody or however she wanted. We were supposed to meet in December on a Sunday. And I waited for her that day. And after she didn't come about an hour or so, I called. And when nobody answered the call, then I used somebody else's phone and she answered. And she, said she was stressed or whatever. And
So she's saying that you all told her that you would get back with her, that she called you and you didn't answer your phone. And so she used someone else's phone and then you answered. Did you all catch that? I know the dogs is barking. So the implication was you was trying to avoid her from giving her money back. Can you talk about that?
So again, we buried my husband that Saturday. The following Sunday, I was supposed to meet up with her. And I wasn't in a good place. So I gave my girlfriend her number, which name is Tawana. And I told Tawana to call her and tell her right now I'm not in a good space to deal with this. So
her husband had just died.
right. So my girlfriend said that she would go and meet with Miss Sylvia. At that time, a young lady named Tiffany was helping my husband with his contracts. So instead of Tawana meeting with Miss Sylvia, I sent Tiffany to represent me. So Tiffany did meet with her, I think that Wednesday.
Now, what was it when she called you and then you didn't answer and then she called back on another phone?
I had my girlfriend to call her. So I wasn't ducking her. My girlfriend did actually call her and tell her that I'm not in a good space right now to deal with anything.
How soon after your husband's funeral was she calling and asking about this money?
The following week, I believe it was the following week.
So a week later, she calls you and she's asking you for the $31,000 that she gave to your husband.
Yes, what she did was she got in contact with my husband's stepmother's niece. And the niece in turn called me and told me to call her. So that's what happened. That's how we initially started talking. After that, like I said, Tiffany went out to her home to meet with her and Bossy and her husband. And I think it was another guy there. And Tiffany told her that Extreme Design could finish the work. And Ms. Williams said no, she wanted her money back.
Okay. And so she sued you for that.
Yes.
Now, and they're suing for unjust enrichment, and we defined that. They're saying that she gave your husband or your husband's business $31,000 because you're married and part of his business, that $31,000 somehow benefited you, and therefore you should give that back to her because there was no work that was performed. And that's the basis of their complaint. Now, their attorney, I haven't heard from her attorney since this deposition, but my suspicion is a lot of this was new to him too. So I'm hopeful that they might be willing to drop it, but we'll see. But that's the gist of what we're having. So I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Cheney now because I'm sure she has tons of questions. And again, this is unfortunate. And John and I will talk about this later about what could have been done to avoid it, how contractors and the rights for them to demand money up front. There's a lot to talk about in this case, but I'm gonna let Dr. Cheney ask some questions. You have to unmute, Dr. Cheney. You're muted. Just click on your. It's still muted. Look, hold on. We still can't hear you.
No,
There we go.
yeah. I'm sorry about your loss, Mrs. Tymus. Sorry about that. The question that I'm going to ask you, you kind of sort of answered already, but I'll do it anyway. When you were notified of the problem of the debt, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And you can fumble around with this. Had you had this type of surprise in the past about another matter that perhaps you should have been informed? Was it routine to leave you out of the loop, so to speak? And I'm kind of getting that answer that a private business within a marriage or something like that.
Well, I wasn't a part of his business. So I didn't know what he was working on or not working on. So again, I didn't even know that he was doing work for her. I wasn't a part of his company, so he didn't discuss, okay, I'm doing work for blase, blase, blase. We never had those discussions because I wasn't a part of his company.
You may have said it already. How long was the company? How long was the marriage and how long was the company?
I think his company,
Roughly.
roughly about maybe 15 years, because before his father passed, his father was in business with him. We were married for 34 years, August 6th.
Okay. All right. Do you think you should have been made aware of his business matters throughout your marriage?
No, because I wasn't a part of it. I didn't want anything to do with it.
Okay. And this is almost the answer to my last question. Just generally, do you think this? Your thoughts. Are some couples okay with others handling the financial parts of a marriage and willing to accept the outcomes? Whatever happens.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, in my household, I did my paycheck and he would give me money to pay his portions of the bill. So that's how our marriage worked.
Wow, that's an interesting one. Okay.
And there are checks that he was writing from the business to you. Is that right?
Yes, when he would give me money to pay bills, he would write me checks from his business account.
Right. And so what needs to be clarified for everyone, once when a contractor gets paid the money up front, he draws from this money as he works. And attorneys do the same thing. We'll take a retainer. We don't get to just start spending the money as soon as we get it. We have to work it down. So if we spend a couple of hours working on a brief or researching, then we pull that money out and now it's ours. So Miss Williams, the plaintiff, gave your husband $31,000 August 6th. He could have spent a day talking to people about her basement. Now, some of that money was his now. So if he wrote you a check, that was his money to do with that with. It wasn't as though she gave him a check on August 6th and he died August the 7th. Right? Then that would be hard to justify. Well, we know he didn't spend $31,000 in a day. But coming down to almost 4 months, which we're going to show to the court, that money was gone. And rightfully so, based on her own words. John, do you have any questions for Ms. Tymus?
No, I don't have any questions for her. I mean, again, my sincerest condolences on your loss and the fact that your loss seems to be continually compounded by this legal situation. I mean, it's bad enough to have to kind of engage such a loss, but then to have to engage it in such a negative way is really heartfelt and very painful. I really feel for you in that regard. And I'm hoping that we can get this resolved for you so you can grieve in your own way, in your own, 2 years, 2 years, but the way this whole legal thing has gone on, you really haven't had your space.
Right.
Because this is always kind of crowding in on you. So, but I don't have any specific questions.
Yeah, and we contemplated actually cross-suing because it's borderline outrageous for anyone to think that a spouse should be liable for her husband's business 4 months after the fact. It's an outrageous thing to think about, and to continue to make her relive this situation that she should have been grieving, as you said, John, in her own way 2 years ago. We're still in the midst of it. It very much raises the idea of suing this woman, cross suing, because no one should have to go through this. But not to worry, Ms. Tymus, we're going to put this thing to rest. There is no legal basis for her to get any money from you. And I know you all made an offer, right? How much you offered? Yeah, twice. You offered her what, 15,000 and 20,000?
The first time I offered her 15,000. The second time I offered her 20,000. She said she won't take anything less than 30,000.
Yeah. She's gonna wish she took you up on that offer.
I don't get that at all. I mean, there's no evidence from, the deposition that nothing happened after August 6th. And indeed, in your sort of back and forth with her, oh yeah, I saw him. Oh yeah, Bossy was there. Certainly implication is stuff happened. I mean, no, there's no written record as to exactly what happened, but there's no indication that there was some dissatisfaction that no work was happening. So, man, 15 or 20 sounds like that's a real bargain.
Yeah. Yeah. And all things work together for good. So it's maybe good that she didn't accept that, because now
You ain't gonna get nothing.
you're not gonna get a thing. Ms. Tymus, thank you so much for taking the time. We know this was emotional and I hate to have to always talk about it, but in the end, justice will be had.
Hope so.
All righty.
Really.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care of yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Whenever you need a call, just shoot me a call, even if you just want to talk about the case.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Unfortunate. Now let's start off the top and let's talk about contractors. And I don't have anything against contractors. I love contractors. I work with contractors all the time. But let's just say it as it is. To give a contractor 30% of the total job up front opens the door for some serious, serious disaster. So let's talk about why they justify it. Ask any contractor, why do you need 30% up front? And they'll tell you, because I need to buy materials. I need to buy supplies, right? So what can you do? You're a homeowner. They say, yeah, I can do this for 100,000. I need 33.3 thousand up front because your house has a lot of work and I need to buy the wood. I need to buy the nails. I need to buy all of this. So what can you do? One, buy them yourself. Tell the contractor, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, get all the materials that you need to start the job, and have the cashier call me and I'll pay over the phone, or I'll go with you and I'll buy the materials. Now, again, the contractors that listen to this, they're going to be pissed because they'll say, no, it doesn't work that way. It can work that way. And what some of them won't tell you is, one, the materials that they're buying, that they want the money for up front, they already have. Their last job, wood was left over. The job before that, nails were left over. The job before that, 2x4s and all of this stuff. Or what they're not telling you is they're getting a steep discount because they're buying in bulk. So they might tell you the write-up is $15,000 when in truth it's $10,000. So they pocket an extra $5,000. And I fight with contractors tooth and nail over this. I want my money up front. And I say, there's no one in this country. You don't go to McDonald's and you get a job and say, okay, I start tomorrow. Okay, when am I getting my check? Well, you get your check 2 weeks in the hole. No. I need it before I come into work. What profession do you get paid before you step foot on the job? Not even athletes. Athletes might get a signing bonus to sign to perform for them. But if they don't, then guess what? They have to turn over that bonus check. Example is Antonio Brown, who had the $30 million signing bonus with the Raiders. And before he stepped foot on the field, he quit and he had to give it all back. No one gets paid for work they have not yet performed. And contractors are not exempt from that rule. And as a result, now we have a situation where a woman's husband was paid up front. He died. And the woman says, hey, give me back my money, wife. And there's big litigation now because the contractor accepted money up front. One more thing before I turn it over to you, John. So bad things could happen. The contractor could say, well, look, I could start working on this house and I could spend my own money and buy all these materials. And then the homeowner could say, I'm not paying you. What about that? Well, the contractor has a legal tool called a mechanic's lien. So if they don't get paid, that house is not going anywhere. The homeowner might go to Spain. They might hide out in Egypt, in the Nubian villages, to avoid a lawsuit. But their house is still there. So the only thing the contractor has to do is show proof that they had a contract, show proof that they worked, and put a lien on that home for how much money he is owed. And at some point, the homeowner is going to have to pay them. But you flip it, and if the homeowner gives the contractor all the money, and the contractor decides to take that money and go to Nepal, what's the homeowner going to do? Send a process server to Nepal to try to find this guy in the mountains? They're out. So people listening, insist, if you have work done, it's going to be hard because contractors as it is now, and I think there needs to be legislation, and there might even be some that would not allow a contractor to receive all this loads of money up front. In the case of Ms. Tymus, it's an unfortunate situation for Ms. Williams because that $31,000 is gone. And Ms. Williams is not going to have to be made to pay that. A business is a total separate entity of another human being. Even if it was just her and her husband, and they went into this thing together and they both were there and they said, look, we're going to do this. She has enough evidence to show that that money is gone by the time her husband was dead. But the fact that he had a business and the money went into the business and she had nothing at all to do with this business, no. Dr. Cheney, any more questions from you?
Yeah, what about this marriage business that you basically are partners or roommates? You're paying your bills, I'm paying my bills, and I was just wondering if there are laws saying that you would be responsible because of this notion of marriage. So is it state, it depends on the states, or?
Well, it's true that when you're married, there's this thing called community property. Everything you own is your spouse's, including debt. So if I'm married and me and my spouse has a house and she has a credit card and she dies, maybe they can try to get me for her debt. But that's not the situation here. This was a business that she's not a part of.
We have to be clear, Salon, it's a corporate entity. This
Right.
is just, Derek Tymus, hi, here's my shingle. No, he has a corporation, a limited liability company that is a separate legal entity, and under the law, that is a person. We can get into that whole conversation another day, whether that's a good idea, but it is. That is the way the law sees it. That person, Derek Williams LLC, is the legal entity. In other words, if there's a contract, which she doesn't have,
Which may not even exist.
which may not even exist. But if there is a let's go with it. She says there was. The contract was not with him personally. It couldn't be. The likelihood is, indeed, it'd be interesting. I don't know if she has the copy. Who did she write the check out to? Did she write the check out to him? Did she write the check out to the business? But the bottom line is the business is the business, and the business is a separate entity from him. Let alone, I mean, in other words, we're talking about Mrs. Williams not being, Mrs. Tymus not being liable here. But on some levels, he isn't even going to be liable, right? The LLC, you can sue the LLC, but you can't necessarily get at him. The LLC is protecting him from a certain amount of liability, depending on what's gone on. I mean, fraud, yeah, if there's fraud's going on, maybe you'll get past that. But there's that whole layer. So the fact that they're married doesn't create some kind of liability for his wife. It's a company. She's not an officer in the company. She's not a director in the company. She's not an employee of the company. And even if she had been an employee of the company, that would not leave her liable. She's not an owner. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The checks that she wrote, we don't know yet if she wrote it to Derek Tymus individually or if she wrote it to his company, Extreme Designs.
Yeah.
She says she has copies of the check. They're still supposed to be getting that to me. But we do know that there was a large amount of money deposited into both accounts, but all of that money was gone by the time he was passed.
What do you mean by both accounts?
His personal and his business account.
Oh.
So, and again, contractors know that when you get electricians, you get plumbers, you get framers, those are three specialty people that you need. An electrician, which in her deposition, she knew that he had, a plumber, which again, his name was Derek, she knew that he had, and a framer, which she doesn't know what his name is, but he was there. These people don't come for free. And I asked her, well, did you pay these people? She said no. So the money that Derek received from her, he paid to these people. So the money that she gave him was gone. And again, it doesn't take much. You don't have to be an architect or some sort of experienced contractor to know if he spent $30,000 in a month, chances are he spent $31,000 in 4 months. It just makes sense.
It's certainly plausible enough that she's just in a Ms. Williams is in a very difficult place. I mean, we get to the justice issues. I feel for her in the justice issue that she's kind of been left in a lurch. Okay, that's true. But nothing we've seen so far gives me any indication that she has not gotten the benefit of her bargain, to use that kind of jargon language.
Right.
Bargain for him to do work. He did work. He didn't finish it, but she didn't pay him the entire contract amount. So you got what you paid for, or at least you got enough of what you paid for that, all right, if you want to argue around the edges, maybe there's something to be said. But she wants the whole thing, and it's like, that's just overreach.
Right. And if you look at the elements of unjust enrichment, the benefit conferred upon Ms. Tymus. Was there a benefit? There might have been. She might have benefited from that $31,000 that her husband received because he might have bought things for the home with it. Was there a knowledge that this benefit was bestowed upon her from she didn't know. She said, I don't have anything to do with that business. She didn't know who the money was coming from, where it was coming from. She did not even know Miss Sylvia. And then the last thing is she accepted the benefit. She didn't accept anything from Miss Sylvia because she didn't know her. So the cause of action on that alone has to die.
Yeah.
But the unnecessary stress that she's going through, Dr. Cheney, can you imagine what that might have to be like?
And it's a year.
I'm sure that is really bad, really tough. And she's crying. Yeah, it's really sad. It's sad on both sides, really. I feel for them.
Yeah, it's sad that the homeowner
Yeah.
gave up this money. And she said the basement is exactly the same as it's been since he passed in 2019. My hope would have been that some of these people who she knew so well with the late Derek Tymus would say, look, he's passed. I'm going to do some of this work for you and not charge you to get your basement done. I mean, things could have come together to where it didn't have to come to this. But as I showed you all in minute 42 into this deposition, she says that they told me that they were going to give me the money back. And then I tried to call and they weren't calling me back. I had to call from another phone. So she was probably rubbed the wrong way, thinking that Derek's wife, who I don't know, is trying to duck me now. I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to go after my money.
Let me ask, with a case like this or a situation like this, didn't they have to go through the government, the DC government? The contractor had to.
That's another
DCRA, yeah.
That's another very interesting point that you brought up. And it could even be a way to end this case. Remember, everyone, these cases are live. We're not talking, except with the exception of last week with Miss Irwin, her case was already closed. This case is live. But when you look at the facts of this particular case, Miss Tymus lives in DC.
Mm.
Miss Williams lives in Maryland. The home that we're talking about with the basement is in Maryland. Mr. Tymus had to have pulled permits from Maryland.
Oh, it's Maryland.
Hopefully.
But Mr. Tymus was not licensed in Maryland. So he was working with Maryland contractors. So one issue is, why did you even bring this case up in Maryland? I mean, in DC. It seems as though the infraction happened in Maryland. So the proper venue would have been Maryland.
But is the company located in the district?
The company was in the
So
district.
does she have to sue him where he is, so to speak? I mean,
They would have the option. They would have
or because it's real property, you could sue in Maryland?
in Maryland, and because that's where the incident took place. But yeah, now that it's here in DC, we'll go with DC. But you're right, Dr. Cheney. There are guidelines. All the rules that govern this are going to be Maryland rules because the house is located in Maryland.
Yeah, because here in DC, construction is going on everywhere, and you have to go through the DCRA, the government agency that handles that. But yeah, I see what you're saying. This is Maryland, and
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that'll be one of the things, to see what permits were applied for, if any, and that again would give you some idea of the scope of the work that was being done.
Yeah. And I was talking to a contractor yesterday, and I could pull all the permits, see how much money was spent to justify for them that this money was gone. But I don't even think we need to do that. She's not a member of his business. And the money was gone by the time he was dead. They never complained. They never said work wasn't being done. He worked from August the 6th. I think he got sick 3 days before he died. So August the 23rd.
November.
November the 23rd. Yes, so that money was rightfully used and spent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess simply, she fails to state a claim might be enough to talk the whole thing.
Now, ironically enough, she had 2 attorneys before us, and they tried that and it didn't work. So I don't know if the judge, if it wasn't written as strongly as one of ours would have been.
How could it have been?
Right. So we'll file a motion for summary judgment now that this deposition is over and we get a little bit more facts. And I think that we can get it thrown out without a hearing.
And
So-
they have to post her?
They haven't opposed her, no. And I doubt they will. So wrap us up with the injustice here. What's the injustice in this particular case?
Well, the biggest one is simply Ms. Tymus is being dragged through the legal mud for something that she is wholly disconnected to. That she's being somehow, yeah, I get it. There's nobody else to turn to take your gripe with, that you feel you didn't get the betterment of your bargain, and she's the only one you can think of to take it out on. But it's unjust to try and lay this at her feet and force her to try and do this. And then to have rejected 2 rather, I think, generous offers. I mean, the injustice goes on there. So, no, that's the big injustice here. She shouldn't be in the middle of this. It's just...
Yeah. Well, we're tackling it. And again, I cannot take any responsibility off of the contractors who insist on taking money up front. So to the contractors who are listening, I know this is your livelihood. I know this is your business, but just think about if you accept that money and you pass away. Think about the lady who gave you the money, her last little bit of money, and she's giving it to you expecting that you're going to do work, but something totally out of your control happens to you. How is she going to get that back? Thank you all for listening. Mr. Salati, thank you. Dr. Cheney.
Salon, the fight continues.
Fight continues. Dr. Cheney, thank you for being with us again today.
Okay.
Next week, we have an expert who's going to talk about the injustices from the police side, an officer. You don't want to miss next week.
Okay.
All righty. We'll see you all. Have a lovely week.
Okay.
You too. Take care, Salon.
Mhm.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.
When someone goes through a divorce, they lose their best friend. They lose their house. They lose their children. Any time away from your child is a loss. Let's face it, divorce kills. The average cost in the United States for a divorce is $13,000. It's not uncommon for a divorce to cost well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. At Remus, we take into consideration you, the divorcing spouse, your property, your money, and your children. We assist clients in directing them to therapy, mentorship programs, savings. We mitigate the cost of divorce to keep your expenses down. We look out for the client holistically.
I came to Remus Law seeking a divorce. Salon listened to me. I told him my story. When he mailed me a copy of the complaint, which summarized my story, he was able to say exactly what I had been feeling for so many years. When my husband was served with the complaint, he came to me with tears in his eyes. He said he didn't know this is how I was really feeling. He asked if we could try again.
At Remus, we do all that we can for our clients.